great to be here, everyone. I'm Ivan. I'm a partner at Accel, and as mentioned, we're here with Jesse Zhang, the CEO and co-founder of Decagon. So I know the title of our fireside chat today is Stealth to 100 Million, and we're definitely going to cover a wide range of topics around company building. But maybe to get started, we can just get to know Jesse a little bit better. Why don't you tell us about yourself and your background, where you're from?
Sure. Yeah. Hey, everyone. Really excited to be here and see all of you. So as Ivan mentioned, I'm one of the founders of Decagon. We build essentially AI customer service agents, and we're based in SF, growing really quickly. Before this, I was born and raised in Boulder, grew up there, went to college at Harvard, studied CS, and then started my first company afterwards. And I guess today we'll spend a good amount of time talking about that company. That company we worked on for 4 years and eventually was acquired by Niantic and stayed there for about a year and then left to start Decagon. So I think second company, tons of differences between the two companies. And I would say, yeah, by far the first one was a lot more grindy, I guess. So yeah, happy to talk about it.
Awesome. Maybe just a show of hands again. How many folks are founders in the audience? Just raise your hand. Amazing. Okay. Well, we're going to talk about a lot of things today, and I think it's a great dichotomy between your previous company, Loki, and Decagon today. Obviously, Stealth to 100 million here is referring to Decagon having raised $100 million. But for the founders out there, raising money does not matter, right? We're here to build a business. So I think the maybe starting point here is let's talk about this idea of selecting projects, right? Selecting what to work on. You've gone through this a few times, Loki and Decagon. Sometimes it's turned out better, and sometimes it's turned out worse. If you think back to maybe even before Loki, how did you approach selecting what to work on? How did you approach where to spend your time, what projects to dig into?
I mean, but before Loki, it was just kind of I was growing up and going to school. I would say in general, I would select things based on like what I felt like the smartest people were doing. So when I was growing up, I was doing a lot of math contests. And then through that process, met a lot of older folks that were very smart, and I looked up to them. And most of them went into, I would say, like quant trading probably, but then a good number of them started going into startups, and I was inspired by that, and that's why I would say, like, even before going to college, I was like pretty sure that's what I wanted to do. With the first company, so it was 4 years. The first 3 years, I would say, were very rough in terms of there's tons of ups and downs, and as there's a lot of founders in the room, I assume everyone agrees that like probably the toughest time in a company's journey is like the initial ideation phase where you're like not really sure what to work on, and you feel like you have a lot of energy and you can work very hard, but if you're not working in the right direction, then like literally nothing happens, and then that's very discouraging. So for us, it was like pretty much 3 years of that, and then last year I think we got a little bit lucky, and then we started growing extremely fast. I think in terms of selecting what to work on, at the time we didn't really know how, and I think I have a lot more perspective on that now. But at the time, we were just trying to rationalize like any sort of idea that we could. We were new grads. We we're just reading articles and like looking at what other people are doing and like figuring out like, oh, okay, like this is a space that's interesting and so on. And we were just building a bunch of random stuff. In hindsight, I think we could have very easily like figured out that those ideas were not that good. But when you're in the moment, it's very difficult. So yeah, that was just 3 years of shipping stuff and kind of trying to get stuff to work. I had 2 co-founders at the start. I think both of them got pretty burnt out at like the 1.5 to 2 year mark, and so after that I was solo. And yeah, for me, I just want to keep pushing, and we were just finding different new things and just kind of figuring out ideas to work on, and eventually something caught on. The first company was also a consumer company, and that's important to clarify because I think consumer is very different. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there was that much sort of systematic thinking behind what we decided to work on. It was just trying to rationalize it and think through it every day.
Awesome. Well, maybe we can talk about the transition to Decagon.
Sure.
So Learned a lot from the time at Loki. And from my experience, having seen you start the second company from day zero, you were a lot more deliberate about picking what to work on, who to spend time with, and even your co-founder this time around. And I think it's turned out a lot more successful. So curious what you brought from that previous experience and what you would advise the founders in the room.
Yeah, so the second company, a lot smoother. We figured out what to work on within the first month, and since then it's been just like, not too much variation. The way we did this time, so Ashwin, my co-founder, he had started a company before as well. I think we were similar stages in life, and biggest learning is that you can't overthink the initial phase. So instead of trying to rationalize like, oh, this is a good idea because X, Y, Z, or this is a bad idea because X, Y, Z, we just decided like we're not going to think about it at all. We're just going to aggressively talk to as many customers as possible. And through that process, we arrived at our current idea, which is, as I mentioned before, is essentially an AI agent that handle customer service and so on. The thing with this idea is that it's a very obvious thing to think of. Like when you're thinking about AI agents and use cases, like this is probably the first idea you can come up with. But at the time, we decided like, hey, we've gone through this experience before. We're just going to commit to doing what the market's telling us to do. And literally, I remember there was like a single day where we sat down and had this conversation because the general narrative was, hey, we were seeing that people wanted this, but it's like very easy to kind of convince yourself that this is super competitive space. It's already very crowded. There's probably not that much opportunity. And I remember us sitting down and just being like, hey, well, it's like the thing where everyone tells you you're supposed to just listen to your customers and not, overthink it. And so maybe this is one of those times. And turned out it was one of those times. We just, decided to just commit to it. And because we had seen all this signal, like people were actually willing to pay us, they were willing to pay us quite a bit. And I think that was the exact right time to start this company.
Awesome. Sounds like the second company went through kind of a much steeper trajectory, but there, in your mind, maybe still was this phase of pre-product market fit and post-product market fit, right? And I think there's this common framework in company building or in building products that we think about a lot, which is, you can divide the company into a lot of different phases, but really there's this binary moment where if it's working, a lot of the boulder starts to roll down the hill versus you pushing it up. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that transition. What was it like pre-product market fit, even for this idea that seemed to have market pull? And then how did you feel or know that things were working?
I mean, I think you can really just look at your revenue. If you're kind of building a B2B company, your revenue is like the best indicator for whether things are working or not. I would say that for product market fit, the market matters way more. And you have to be in the right market at the right time. And there is a bit of luck involved in that. And you can try to systematize it as much as possible, as we just said, where you can just do discovery. You can do that very aggressively. You can be very disciplined about that. But you still have to be in the right market at the right time. Like for AI agents, I would say there's really not that many like great markets currently. And I think in the future there will be more. But at least right now in the last year or two, it's been customer service and then coding probably as like by far the two biggest markets. And you have to be in those markets at the right time to have product market fit because otherwise, I guess by definition, it's very hard to get it. The product is not easy to build, but it's a lot easier because if you're already in the market and you have customers telling you like what they want, you can just like build that product and you can ship really quickly. And if you build a good team, like that's a solvable problem. So I would say my biggest learning from these two companies so far is like you really just have to make sure you're in the right market. And the way you do that is, the way to give yourself the best shot of doing that is to have these customer conversations, be really aggressive with discovery, ask people how much they're going to pay for certain things, and then get them to actually pay for it. And that was the best method for us.
Awesome. What if you find yourself in a bad market? So we have folks building out there. Some might be on the same trajectory that Decagon is on, but many people are in the grind, so to speak, right? How do you think about, and both at Loki and Decagon, when you continue to push through, when you decide to pivot, when you decide to do a full reset, what is the right approach that you would take or that you've taken in the past?
Yeah, I don't think there's any right answers to that because everyone just has to make that decision yourself because you understand your business the best. And if you as a founder are like, yeah, I don't really see this going anywhere, like that's when you make the decision. I don't think anyone else can tell you when that is. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of good markets out there. The two I listed, I think, in my opinion, are like the best markets, but there's a lot of like good markets right now. And even those markets, I would say probably now is like a little too late because like you kind of have to like be in there at the right time. Like there's so many coding agents now, there's so many people in our space, and I think if we were starting the company now, it'd be very difficult for us to get the same level of traction. And so part of it is like, okay, how do you find what the next good market is? And I think the only way to do that is if you're boots on the ground talking to a bunch of customers and you feel like, okay, I've gotten all this pulled. And maybe there is already some narrative out there. Like it's unlikely you'll discover this like magic idea that no one's thinking of, right? Like most likely there's going to be people talking about it and people thinking about it. But maybe it's not like fully matured as a great market yet. And if you're kind of on the early end of that and you've kind of seen that in the market and you've started building for it, that's the right time. And yeah, right now, at least within the AI agent market, I feel like there are definitely like many of those that will probably be like the next best markets. And obviously, like outside of AI agents, there's a lot more. That's just like mostly what we're thinking about these days.
Cool. I remember when we invested in Decagon, it was just you and Ashwin. You think you had one or two engineers on the team at the time, but we were very impressed, even for those first and second folks, just how talented they were. And on this journey, a big thing that we emphasized and you guys really nailed was building this talent black hole. This idea of being able to pull in a lot of talented people and holding that bar very high. And I've been impressed by that. So I'm super curious, maybe how do you think about selecting people to work with? What attributes do you look for? This could be your co-founder, this could be your first employee, second employee, and that tends to compound as well. So,
yeah, I think the first couple people matter a lot because they set the tone for the rest of the company. And if your first folks are really really good, other people will want to join. But yeah, I mean, hiring is like very difficult. I don't think anyone's like solved hiring, and we're still spending a lot of time on hiring. I think it's gotten easier over time because like once you have a base of great people and your like company is like making progress, like it's easier to get more people, but still it's not easy. The attributes we looked for, so we're fully in office, and so that was a nice filter for kind of selecting for like the pace and intensity. And then we just looked for people that have a very high clock speed, I guess, where they're able to think really quickly and adapt really quickly and learn things. And I think Asha and I, we were fortunate because I guess this is like second company, so we like knew a lot more people this time around, and we were able to convince the early group, a very strong group, to join, and then that made the subsequent waves a lot easier.
Were there any specific frameworks or filters you would use? So some examples would be try to hire people that are more talented than you on certain dimensions, right? Or find folks that augment your weakness, or if it's something you're not familiar in, excuse me, space you're not familiar with, bring in someone else to help you evaluate. What were some of those kind of more tactical things that you used to build the early team?
Yeah, early on, I don't think you have the luxury to like have stuff like that. You're really just finding like great people that ideally have, I don't know, at least like the same caliber or raise your caliber in some respect. But I think the early folks, it's really just ad hoc. Like you're trying to find individuals, maybe you've worked with them before, or you know them, or you went to school with them, or whatever, and that is going to be the initial set. I think as we grow, like right now that we have execs at the company, I think like the framework for thinking about execs is that, yeah, they should be better at executing on this thing than any of the founders. And you should be able to let them operate like pretty autonomously and trust that they will be able to generate like good results. And the founders, sort of what they bring at that point is well, you have more context on the business, and so you've kind of have a lot more thoughts and like perspective on things because you've just been there longer. You're in way more conversations, and you have presumably way more connections to other firms that can help you, other teams that can help you, and so on. And so that's kind of your role. And then the execs are there to execute. And we recently brought on basically like sales exec, marketing exec, and finance exec at the same time. And like their role is to execute their functions better than any of us. And yeah, if you're a good exec, like you should be able to do that. But the founders still have to be there to kind of set the foundation.
Awesome. Maybe before transitioning to the next topic, this last question. So today, I think you're approaching 100 people. Maybe in the next few months, you'll break that. So that's really fast growth, right? I think you founded the company less than 2 years ago.
Year and a half around.
Year and a half. So as you think about scaling the business, were there distinct phases in terms of the team size and what changed, and how did you have to both change how you hire or how you work with the team at those phases?
Yeah, I mean, right now I still don't think we're at the scale where like there's like major changes. I think up until 100, at least like that's the experience that we have. It's been pretty consistent, which is we've just gotten bigger and bigger offices, I guess. But like the offices still house like everyone in the same space, and like we're all kind of sitting together, and that feels good because like you still feel like a one unit, right? Because sales, engineering, they're sitting in the same space, and they can talk to each other a lot. Everyone's having lunch together and so on. So I think at this point it's still good. And we're about to move to a new office, and after 100, it's hard to find offices that are like everyone in the same space, and so you start to kind of like shard it a little bit. The biggest difference that we've seen is that communication becomes a lot trickier as the team grows, because when you're small, like everyone's on the same page, you just like stand up and talk, and like everyone can hear you and so on. At some point, you have to be very mindful of that, and I think that's not something we were super mindful of at the beginning. But then I think we really quickly realized that like, oh, even though everyone's in the same space, you still have to put a lot of effort into making sure folks are on the same page and so on. We got advice from some successful founders, older ones, that were kind of telling us like you need to implement some sort of OKR system pretty quickly, not to like drive a process around OKRs, but just to have like literally like 4 bullet points that everyone remembers, so that you're kind of rowing in the same direction. So there are things like that we had to start doing, but I have heard that typically around 200 people, there's like another sort of like stage, and we're not there yet.
Awesome. Thinking back, I remember we were in a conference room, I think a month after we invested, and you guys were at about $1 million in revenue. And something I thought was so funny that you and Ashwin both said was, if we just get to 10, everything will be okay. we can take our foot off the gas, and it'll get easier. You guys are well north of that now, and maybe just for the audience, is it any easier?
It is easier. Yeah. It's quite a bit easier actually.
Okay.
So I think, in my opinion, 0 to 1 is like by far the hardest. And when you're there, because like if you don't know really what you're working on and you're not sure if it works or not, it's kind of like the existential worry that you have. And so, yeah, 0 to 1 is like hard, and then 1 to 10 is also quite difficult for different reasons. Because, when you're before 1, you're just like, oh, I just need to get to 1 no matter what. Like, and then like 1 is like, oh, I just need to get to 5, and then it'll be okay. And yeah, the biggest difference from 1 to 10 is it is more of like you have a lot of more stuff to do. Because from 0 to 1, you're like, okay, I just want to land my first couple customers, and you're just like all hands on deck there. And then 1 to 10, there's just a lot more stuff. But like you have to manage hiring, you have to manage like getting your contracts, you have to manage like customer success now because you close all these customers and so on. And so there's just a lot more to do. And then presumably at around 10, you have your execs there. And so things start to get a little easier because like their goal is to scale this and so on. And so right now we're kind of in that journey of like figuring out how to turn what we have into like a machine that can scale. And that's also not easy, but in my opinion, it's like easier and more enjoyable than the initial phase.
It's funny. I definitely thought you were going to say it's just as hard. Awesome. Okay, well, maybe some last closing words here. What advice would you have, given you've really gone through, multiple different industries, consumer, enterprise, companies that haven't worked as well, companies that are really working? Any kind of parting wisdom for the founders here today?
Yeah, I think the market you're in matters a lot. Like, I think if you want to be a founder, if you didn't have confidence in your own abilities, right? Like maybe you're really strong technically, maybe you're really strong at sales or whatever. But it's just way harder if you're in a market that is not growing, or it's not a great market, or it's small, or people don't have money to buy stuff or whatever. So ideally, you can pick the right time, the right market to build your product, so that like your skills and like what you're good at can really shine, and it's like it can really accelerate the company. At least that's been my biggest learning so far, because like I don't think as a person I've changed that much, or like skill set wise I've changed that much from the first company, but you really like benefit from being in the right place. And yeah, it's not like if you're in the right market, like stuff just magically works. Obviously, there's still a lot of challenges you have to solve, but I think that's one big thing. And the only way to get to that point is by having very aggressive conversations with customers, where not aggressive like tone-wise, but like aggressively figuring out like, okay, what are they willing to pay for, and like really trying to dig beneath what they're saying. Because people will tell you all the time, they're like, hey, it'd be like awesome if you could build this and whatever, but you get to like, oh, how much are you going to pay for that? And it's like, like not really sure, like budget's tight. It's like maybe like $50 a month or something like that. And that's like a tough spot to be in. So yeah, I think the best way to find a market is to have these conversations and just be very like disciplined about it, and hopefully things work out.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jesse.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you.